Today, I want to talk about a technique in neuro-linguistic programming called sensory preferencing, dominant sensory preferencing, okay? And it overlaps every aspect of communication, every aspect of communication. And when I think of communication, sometimes other people think in communication what they hear. Okay, communication revolves around verbal and nonverbal. That is communication. In fact, 57%, we talked about this in the last slide, 57% of how we communication is nonverbal. And so if you're doing a lot of the work over the phone, you really have to overemphasize your communication by using your body to help project the words more effectively and efficiently to achieve your outcome and objectives. So that's why perhaps standing up or sitting on the edge of your seat while you're dialing, and when you make a phone call, perhaps stand up, because you have better use of your body and better control over your voice tonality and rate of speech to slow it down or to speed it right back up. And you saw, when I said slow it down, I used my body to help reduce the speed. Then I use my body to go ahead and pick it back up. All right. So when I say communication, it involves both verbal and nonverbal. But today's topic, I'm not going to get into that so much today. I'm going to talk about dominant sensory preferencing and how it affects every aspect of our communication. So now you are going to be responsible. You'll have more responsibility for the outcomes that you get through your communication, meaning verbal and nonverbal. Okay. Each one of us has a dominant sensory preference. Okay, what are our sensories? Okay, smell, taste, feel, sight, touch. Okay. However, we are not dominantly sensory preferenced to taste. That's gustatory scientifically, and olfactory is smell. So we don't necessarily lead with taste. We don't necessarily lead with smell, although they are parts of our communication. You may have heard the reference, well, that something just doesn't smell right. Okay. They're not talking about the stinky fish that was microwaved in the oven. Thank you, Rochelle, at the office. This is something they're saying, doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel right. And I'm using the olfactory sense to describe how I feel. Hear that? Okay. If something doesn't smell right, that just left a bad taste in my mouth. After meeting with that attorney, it just left a bad taste in my mouth. So they're describing that experience with taste. Okay. Not too many people, and very, 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 very few, if nobody, is dominantly sensory, is dominant in taste, gustatory, or dominant in olfactory and smell, as they describe their experiences through life in the past, in the present, and in the future. Dominant sensory preferencing not only involves all forms of communication, verbal and nonverbal, it also is one of the greatest time travelers, because it is used to describe how we felt, what we've seen, and what we've heard in the past, what we are seeing, what we are feeling, and what we are hearing in the present, and then what we will see, what we will hear, and what we will feel in the future. So each one of those, and if you were hearing what I was saying, and you could see a little bit about this timeline, we are dominantly sensory preferenced in one of three areas: visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. Okay, I'm just going to remove this K, kinesthetic, because that's sort of an interesting word. I'm just going to put emotion. So emotion, kinesthetic, or emotion. Okay. Look, feel, listen. Visual, emotional, and auditory. Now, I hesitate sometimes to use emotion because that has a lot of feeling to it. The word kinesthetic also describes it as touch. Touch. Touch and feeling, kinesthetic. More hands-on, kinesthetic. Okay, that's a kinesthetic word. You know, that training was really hands-on. Okay, meaning there was a kinesthetic. I could really see myself using those techniques. That was visual. Did you hear what was shared during that? It really made a lot of sense to me. Auditory, okay? 55% of your audience is going to be visually dominant. 30% of your audience is going to be kinesthetic or emotionally dominant. Auditory is 15%. Okay? Your clients and your customers, your audience, yourself, your spouse, your roommate, your kids, your aunts, your uncles, your spouses, everyone has one dominant sensory preference and a servant to that. Okay. And it doesn't mean that somebody who is auditorily dominant has an advantage over somebody who is kinesthetically advantaged or dominant, nor does it mean that somebody who is visually dominant has an advantage over anyone. It's who you are. However, who you are isn't exactly like the rest of the human race. And so oftentimes we will be met with resistance giving a message that makes absolutely logical and perhaps even sense emotionally, and the other person does not accept what it is we're throwing down, what it is that we are demonstrating and displaying to them. They will not get what it is that we're talking about, and they refuse to feel what it is that we want them to address. Did you hear how I used all three in that last statement? Or all of you just like hypnotized and in a trance right now?
I'm just trying to process all of it.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's like something that, I mean, you're saying all of this quickly, but for me personally, I have to like digest it and think about it before I can really, respond quickly to you.
Yeah, you see it, then feel it, then apply it.
Yeah.
I know. Your body language told me everything. Your eye movement, your head movement, and then the gesture and your words. That was congruent. Yeah.
Oh. Well, you're quite trained.
Well, it takes practice. This takes practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's really important.
Yeah, we are in control to some degree to the outcomes we receive when we make our presentations in our communication. So let me give you an example. When I was learning this in the late 2000s, this was introduced to me by a coach, and I'm like, whoa, where did you get this information? He goes, it's NLP. I'm like, what the hell is NLP? I thought that was somebody's initials. It's neuro-linguistic programming. And so I investigated what neuro-linguistic programming is and I took a year-long course and became a master practitioner, which led me to write a book, which led me to teach this communication all around the United States to various sales teams. So I want to share this with you because it's extremely effective and extremely powerful. Once you have this information, you can control it and wield it and use it for the proper motivations. And you'll also be able to identify when you feel like you are being manipulated in some way, shape, or form with somebody else who knows this information, you can catch them. So when I was engaged in full-time real estate and not that I'm not right now, but I have a different capacity. I was closing 57 to 60 percent of my listing presentations. I was going out on 104 listing appointments per year, and I was taking about 50 to 60 listings per year. And I thought I was fucking pretty, I'm sorry, I thought I was pretty freaking good. Okay. And my coach goes, "You're not that great, Todd." And I'm like, "Well, why is that?" He goes, "You should be doing about 80. I'm like, okay, how do I do that?
Go bash.
He goes, "Well, you don't have to dial more. You don't have to make more calls. Everything is there available for you. You just need to learn how to communicate more effectively." And I, "Whoa, what is that?" And he goes, and then he introduced this to me. So I didn't have to relearn scripts and dialogues. All I needed to do is supplement it with different verbal words and nonverbal techniques when I was making my presentations.
Well, wasn't it important for you to
Hold on. After studying this for 30 days, I devoured this information. And my presentations, I discovered, were highly visual. They were all visual. Let me show you what we can do. Let's take a look at these comparables. We're going to have a beautiful sign to display. You should see the marketing that we're going to do. Can you imagine this? And, think about what that's going to look like later. Here's what the outcome's going to be. Visualize, take a look at what you want to be in the, blah, blah, blah. All visual. Great presentation, lots of energy, lots of purpose, lots of passion, but it was highly all visual. And the visual people that were the decision makers, I'd close. Okay. But there were percentages of people that I'm like, God, I felt like everything was there. And then my coach goes, call them back and ask them why they didn't list with you. I'm like, ooh, that's painful. So I did. And I got feedback like this: "Todd, you're great. It really made sense, but we just felt more connected with another real estate broker." What's this? Feel connected? And another, it started coming up. People were like, and then I started getting pissed, and people were like, "Well, we just felt connected better with somebody else. How you're good, funny, energy, but we, felt more comfortable with somebody." I go, "You felt, so it was more about a connection." I thought, well, here's a connection for you. Click, disconnection. But it wasn't their disconnection. It was me disconnection. And then once I took ownership of how I was communicating, everything freaking changed. I took the time to understand not everyone was freaking like me in the visual dominant preference. And so I learned how to communicate verbally and non-verbally to the emotional based people, and how to identify what they were. So once I can identify, I could walk into a room and quickly start to address the prospects. If they were all emotionally based, I would reduce the amount of visual terms, visual gestures, to meet them where they need to be met, because they are more important than I am. And then everyone wins. So visual, okay, so, oh boy, there is, and we got about 6 minutes. So I'm going to introduce this today. We'll work this out for the rest of this week, because I would literally spend almost 4 hours with a group of people just on this topic. But to get this started, it works in every single step of your listing, of your presentations, of your sales process. Buyer consultations, seller consultations, over the phone, online, open house, everything. It works in the introduction, it works in the greeting, it works in the discovery, it works in finding pain, it works in solving pain, it works in handling objections, and it works in closing. It works in every single aspect of your sales process, from beginning to end, verbal and nonverbal. So there isn't an area in your sales process that it doesn't work. It works in text messages. It works in social media stuff, how you address people verbally and non-verbally. So Let me start with just the how to use it for rapport. We talked about last session how to make anyone like you in 0 to 90 seconds using UCAT, understanding commonality, appreciation, and trust. Okay, that is the start. How can you make that even more effective? Bam, using dominant, see, bam, using dominant sensory preferencing in a sensory loop. Think of it this way: look, feel, listen. Look, feel, listen. If you use, should you use all three within the first 90 seconds, okay, you're not going to leave one person out of the equation of communication. For example, look, the more you are able to let me take a look at what it is that you want, it'll help me get a better understanding here so I can touch on the necessary parts that will make an outcome for you that you'll be screaming from the hilltops about the success that you're going to be able to achieve by taking a look at exactly what the market is going to provide so you can feel comfortable about taking that next step moving forward. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
See, I used the dominant sensory preference loop twice. I went through it twice. Visual, look, feel, listen. Look, feel, listen. Look, feel, listen. It takes some practice. At the end of that 30 days, when I put all this into me, it's like the Matrix. You know, remember how they put that thing in the back of their head and he learned judo in like less than a minute. This is that information, but you don't get it in less than a minute, unfortunately. What happens is you need to exercise this. It's exercising. It's not relearning the language. It's taking control over what it is you're naturally doing to bring more light into the room of communication. It's like a freaking dimmer switch. You can control it. Okay? When I'm thinking about it, it's extremely powerful. Until it becomes second nature, you're not going to learn how to do this just by thinking about it. You have to apply it. And so my production dropped. My production actually dropped in the next following 60, 70 days. My closing ratios went down to about 43%. And I thought I was broken. My coach said, Todd, you're not broken. What you're doing is you're retooling your manufacturing base. Wait till you get this machine. Wait till you get this new machine tuned up. Wait till you learn how to use this new machine, that new tool that you have. Yeah, your production is going to go down. You haven't learned how to bring this. You have a new piece of technology. Wait till you learn how to use it, dude. He goes, trust me, do not miss your boat. Fine. I stuck with it. And then as I began to really incorporate this and actually use it, my closing percentage went up to about 82%. And then when I finally left and started doing this full-time coaching, my coach goes, go into this last presentation. This is going to be your last presentation before you do this, because I let him in what was going on. I was going to do this coaching. I was going to leave the real estate business. He goes, go in there with just a business card, a pen, and the agreements. Nothing else. No folders, no reports, nothing. Business card, a pen, and the agreements. No, not even any folder. Yeah. And this plus some other language techniques. So it is extremely effective. It is extremely effective. We're coming up to the bottom of the hour. Has anyone heard about any of this before?
I have. I mean, not exactly the way you presented it, but I didn't read a book about it and I didn't hear a lecture on it, but it's knowledge that I have just come to know, living my life and talking to people, selling my business to people, just going out there and trying to achieve what I want, my goals in life. I've had to use all of that all the time. Even, I mean, I work at QFC in the deli. I use those
Mhm.
same techniques. I mean, in different ways. I'm not selling real estate, but I am soliciting myself a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we use this every day, all the time,
It is used every single day, all the
all the
time.
time.
And once you're able to control it and see it, the sun produces a massive amount of energy on the Earth's surface.
Yeah.
Massive amounts of energy on the Earth's surface. Same with your communication. It's producing massive amount of energy on the surfaces of those that you're communicating with. What this allows you to do is to take that massive energy, put it through a magnifying glass so you can be very direct and very hot in your communication,
Hmm.
and control that energy in such a way that you can become very dangerous in how you communicate with the likelihood in mind of helping and serving someone else, getting through their challenges to achieve a better life at the end, and you are the conduit for that. And then in exchange, you are rewarded with compensation. It's about serving others.